What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today's clip is from The Line, and I'm with Forrest Valcott. Today, we're taking a call from Steve. Steve is questioning how atheists are interpreting the Bible and whether or not they actually have the authority to do so. I still don't know what the fuck that means. But the conversation quickly devolves into a takedown of biblical interpretation, Christian history, and religious violence. So if you want to fuck around and find out how Forrest and I take down all of these topics, then please stay tuned.
But for right now, let's talk to, how do you feel about Steve calling in from, oopsie. Oops, all Klingons.
Oops,
What?
Klingons.
So stupid. Who's a theist who wants to know where we get our interpretation of the Bible from? Steve, you're on the line with Forrest and John. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. How about you guys?
I'm doing really well, man. So you want to know about our interpretation of the Bible? Is there anything particular you're asking about, or just is that just the general? That's the whole question.
Yeah, kind of. I'm just wondering in general, where do you feel as though you have the authority to interpret these texts in the correct way?
I'm sorry, Steve. Can you read words on a page?
Yeah, I can.
You can? Okay, good, because I can read words on page 2. Therefore, I read words good, and that's how I get like the concepts from the Bible that I get.
Well, technically, let me just stop you there real quick.
It is weird to ask where we get the authority to interpret these things when, like, even Bible scholars, theologians, people who actually study the Bible for a living, are drawing many of the same conclusions that we draw, if not all of them. And also, there are many of them that are secular or at least not Christian. And so, like, you know, we, as John is saying, we just read the page, and a plain text reading of what the text says is what we're going with. And that is good enough, considering the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, there's over 40,000 denominations of Christianity. I guarantee, even if you disagree with my interpretation, there are Christians who agree with it, because that's the way this shit works. But also, the people who actually study this for a living is often where we're getting our information from. I listen to a lot of theologians who tell me a lot about where these things come from and what these words mean, so that I can make a better argument in shows like this. John, you look like you're about to say something.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, we can go to any level that you want to there, Steve. We can go to the Greek interlinear, and we can read it in the original Greek, and we can understand it in the original Greek, in the original context in which they meant it in. We can go to biblical scholars now that are going to reaffirm how we are actually reading these things. I could rattle off a number of scholars that I get my interpretation and my understanding of not only the biblical text, but also the culture in which the Jews were raised in, as well as the Jewish Christians, and then finally the Christians existed within. So, like, whatever level in particular that you want to read the words off of the page, we can literally read the words off of the page. Just like, I don't know, maybe you can give us one particular verse or one particular concept that you seem to disagree with us about, or you think that we are wrong about in our interpretation of it. Maybe a more directed sort of path it could be beneficial. I don't know. I'll let you choose.
Yeah, could you point me out to the biblical scholar or anyone who studies the Bible in general, Greek Septuagint, or any of the texts that we have that says that Jesus commanded people to kill unbelievers at his feet? Could you point that one out? Because I don't believe that there's one biblical scholar worth their salt that would actually say that that's what Jesus commanded. That's a parable. It's a literary device. Right. I mean, so you could say that it says what it says. You could say that, we could just read it with our eyes. But I could say the same thing about scientific text. And I could be like, well, in this scientific literature, it says X, Y, and Z. But I'm not an expert in scientific literature.
Steve.
Okay. Go ahead. I'll let you guys talk for like 5 minutes, but okay, you go ahead.
Right. But I was trying to kind of, you asked a question, and then you had like a minute or two of like exposition on your question. So I guess, just playing off of the last call there, do you believe that Jesus is God? I'm just asking you in your own personal like take on the
Well, you can
Bible.
answer
Do
my
you think
question first because I asked the question
I'm
first.
trying I'm
I
trying
asked
to
what
so
biblical
this is the
scholar says
problem
that
with
Jesus
Christian
kill people and believers.
denominations, Steve, this is the problem with Christian denominations. You and interpretation. You may
I'm
not
not part of
interpret
a
Jesus to be
denomination. I'm
God.
part of a branch.
You're part of a branch, like a Dunder Mifflin branch, or like what kind of fucking branch are you talking about?
Well, this is where church history becomes very pertinent because if you would know anything about church history, you know there's three different branches. There's Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant. I'm part of the Orthodox branch.
Yes, I do
So,
know about
Cool.
church
Orthodoxy,
history and their
Protestant, and
interpretation.
Catholic.
Yeah. So those aren't denominations. Those are
Yeah.
branches. Just kind of clear that up.
No. I understand that, but there are denominations within each of those that they interpret the biblical stuff. So I'm really just trying to figure out
There
how
are
you're
subsections,
interpreting
but
the
they're not
Bible
branches.
so that I can work within your particular interpretation. So I'm asking questions so that I'm not just telling you shit that you don't believe already. Right? This is called having a productive conversation, Steve.
I know. I'm trying to have one. I asked a question about Jesus, killing unbelievers, and no one answered that. So, I think a productive conversation involves asking and answering questions.
Right, Steve, and Forrest is looking up verses to bring up. I'm asking you a clarifying question so that I know how to answer you. And the clarifying question is, do you consider Jesus to be God? Because that's important.
Yes, the Nicene Creed that was established in the second and third century, clarify that Jesus is God.
Okay,
yes.
Good.
So I go
glad.
with the historical ecumenical councils and things of that nature.
Okay. And you understand why I have to ask that, right? Because there are Christians out there that don't consider Jesus to be God, but sort of like on the same level
Christians
as God.
That came thousands of years after the Christianity, I believe. Yes.
Okay. Anyways, I just wanted to clarify that just so that I could actually speak to you in the way that I understand Christian theology. Christian theology states that, Jesus is God. If God is the same as in the past, as he is in the present, as he will be in the future, then God definitely has called for both Christians and Jews alike to unalive people or kill people right in front of them. So, yes, Jesus, being that Jesus is God, has called for that in the Old Testament, Numbers 31, 1 Samuel 15, and there's plenty of other passages that I could bring up. But so if Jesus is God, God has definitely called for that directly of his chosen people.
Okay, so Numbers 31 asserts that they should kill the unbelievers just because they should do it, is what you're saying.
I'm saying that Numbers 31 says that God commands the genocide of an entire group of people to include innocent women and children and men. And you were specifically asking where in the Bible does Jesus say kill unbelievers? And considering that Jesus is God,
I was asking about a historical scholar. I was asking if any historical scholar would assert that belief that Jesus asked for unbelievers to be killed at his feet. That's what I was asking for, to clarify.
Yeah, I've been looking.
Go ahead.
I've been looking. I have not found anyone who is talking about that verse in particular. I have found plenty of people, scholars that I listen to. I've listened to a lot of people who I'll get there in a second. I have found several of my scholar friends who do share with my assertion that the Bible commands for the death of non-believers in general, or that the Bible is a pro-slavery book. Like that, those are pretty common understanding. This one verse in particular, I cannot find. Who knows? Maybe that's the more popular interpretation. All I'm saying is what I said a minute ago when we first brought this up, is that I guarantee that if I can take this interpretation of it by a plain text reading of this, There are other Christians who probably would do the same, but that is still a probably, and it is just about one single verse. We can pick other parts of the Bible, which are very clearly talking about spreading. Jesus also says, I come not to bring peace, but a sword. And like anyone who doesn't hate their own brother does not follow me, and or their family doesn't follow me, and all these other things, which I know for sure have been taken as ways to say that we need to be more violent in the way that we spread this stuff and to spread the faith by sword by any means necessary. So like this one individual single passage that you've picked up here from Luke, like, yeah, I can't find anybody who talks about it. I can very easily find Bible scholars that talk about, the Bible being very obviously pro-slavery front to back. And that's a reason why, it sucks. And these are people who actually study the Bible for a living. Is it just this one interpretation of this one line that you're hung up on, or is it our interpretation in general that you're hung up on?
No, there's multiple. It all comes down to having an authoritative way to read the text, because Jesus also says to cut off your hand if it causes you to sin and pluck out your eye if it causes you to sin. Yeah, we don't see Christians lining up to get their hands cut off and eyes plucked out. So the thing is that it all comes down to...
Oh, hold on, Steve. Are you telling me that Christians historically have never employed that particular logic whatsoever for those particular perceived crimes?
There's been millions of Christians that have existed, so I can't say for sure if one or a group haven't ever done that before. But I'm saying that in general, most Christians know under the historical text that that's not how you interpret that text.
Steve, how do you explain the Crusades? How do you explain the Crusades?
Get from this verse to the Crusades? Like, we're going all over the place.
Well,
like, we are going one thing. Like, we're talking about biblical interpretation, not holy wars.
Steve. We're going all over the place because Christianity is all over the place. Okay, so if you're going to say that Jesus only ever meant this happy-go-lucky fucking frolicking in the fields kind of bullshit, then you're going to have to explain thousands, and I want to overemphasize this, thousands of years of Christians conquering other civilizations, Christians conquering other denominations of Christianity, and putting them to the sword because they felt like their God was calling them to do that. How do you explain that? Are you trying to tell me that your particular denomination of Christianity right now has the perfect interpretation of what Jesus actually meant? Everybody before you has just gotten it wrong, and you just so happen to have the correct interpretation.
Well, it's not me. It's the historical Christianity, like Catholics and Orthodox. That's what I'm saying.
See, but okay. But that's the thing, man. Is what John just said is that Catholics and Orthodox among them, lots of Christians, including Catholics or whatever branch you're in or whatever, Christians have used the Bible, their interpretations, to justify some truly horrific shit. Christians were the ones that were defending the institution of slavery here in the United States because the Bible is a pro-slave book. Christians are the ones who did the Crusades.
Abolitionists were also Christians too.
Exactly. That is exactly the point, Steve, is that two different groups of people can read the same book and come to two very different interpretations. So for you to sit here and say that we don't have the authority to interpret this thing, well, guess what? Apparently, neither did most Christians who have ever lived. And it's completely unreasonable for you to sit here and say that your interpretation, your way of reading it, your way of understanding it is more correct than all of the millions and billions of Christians for thousands of years before you.
Yeah, because what you're bringing up is mostly Protestantism, and Protestantism goes off of sola scriptura. It takes away the traditions and the holy text.
The Crusades were done by the Catholics. The Catholic Church.
What about the Crusades?
Mandated the Crusades.
Why do we keep going back to the Crusades?
Do you think the Crusades were bad, Steve? Do you think the Crusades were bad?
Why would I think they were bad?
There we go.
There we go. Who called the Crusades? Who called the Crusades? Who was the one who called the Crusades?
Hold on just a second.
Catholics.
I'm just going to pull up one particular. The massacre at Iadea. The massacre at Iadea was in the Third Crusade after when King Richard the First, pardon me, had more than 2,000 Muslim prisoners of war from the captured city beheaded. He had 2,000 prisoners of war, and he beheaded them all because he believed God commanded him to do it. Was that a good moral thing, Steve?
Okay, we could talk about individual actions.
Yes or no, Steve?
And we could go and parse them out if they're bad or not.
Yes or no, Steve?
I would say that that's not good. No. I'll answer your question if you want to answer mine, but I'll say that that's no.
So I have answered all of your questions.
The Crusades altogether were a good thing. Yes.
The Crusades,
I'm not saying every single individual act within the Crusades were good.
Where people were promised absolution if they slaughtered as many infidels as possible. That was a good thing, in your opinion.
I'm not. Was that what Pope Urban II said whenever he issued the decree for the Crusades?
Oh my fucking God! You're gonna make me look up every little thing that you.
I'm pretty sure he didn't say that. Google. I know, because you try to be as charitable as possible with biblical people. Even charitable as possible. It's literally comical at this point. Like, you literally try to make them out as blood-raving savages. It's like not true.
Steve, the Catholics waged war against the Protestants.
I came on here to talk about interpretation. This is
no, fuck you. I came on here to.
It's so boring. So this is Pope Urban II, who urged Christians to recapture the Holy Land, especially the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, from Muslim rule. They were given the promise of eternal life, like the promise of eternal life given to Muslim martyrs. Christians were promised absolution from sin and eternal glory. So yeah, this is Pope Urban II promised absolution and eternal life if they went there and sacked these cities and recaptured them through violence. It's not like the Muslims were just like, oh, fuck, I guess we'll just give them to you. Yes, they had to go there and kill Muslims to take back their holy lands with the promise of eternal life. Does that sound like a good thing, Steve?
Oh, he's not on anymore.
Oh, and then Steve hung up. And then Steve hung up. Turns out, when you just Google the shit, you can find a lot of information about why this stuff is pretty fucking bad. And people who believed the Bible did bad things. I love how also he was saying, like, well, yeah, but some abolitionists were Christians too. That's the whole goddamn point, dude. Is that, yes, you can read the same book and either be Martin Luther King, or you can read the same book and join the Lord's Resistance Army. You can do one of two things based on the same damn book.
So it kind of seems to me, therefore, like you're saying that it's not dependent upon the religion that they're practicing, but upon the personal opinions of the people that are implementing said religion, whether they want to read it in a very abolitionist way or in a very I'm gonna enslave your ass kind of way.
It's just fucking like, oh my glob. It's so fucking brainless to sit here and say, no, you don't understand. Steve's God is a good God. Steve's religion is the correct religion. And all these idiots, these billions of idiots for the past 2,000 years, they should have fucking checked with Steve. Like, come on. Just boring. Like, really, just boring thinking.
All right, heathens. Well, like I said, that was kind of a weird call there. If you will, please go down below and let me know what you thought about any of the topics that we brought up here. What do you think about this whole, do atheists have the authority to interpret the Bible? That seems to be kind of a weird position, right? And then what do you think about biblical scholarship as well as interpretations of the Bible? Do you think that Jesus and any biblical scholars for that matter would agree that Jesus commanded violence? What do you think that Jesus said about killing unbelievers? And what do you think about the problems of Christian history that were brought up in the call? Let me know down below in the comments what you think. And while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.